Thanks for checking out this movie review video. So this is for the 1980 film Motel Hell, and when I am reviewing this, it is on Shudder. I don't know how much longer it's going to be on Shudder, but it's been on there for some months at this point, so might be there for a little bit longer. You got some time. Now, this is one that I had voted on. I put up four films in a poll on my YouTube channel, because I always have this issue where I have films that, well, too many films that I just want to get to and review. And so sometimes I decide, I would like other people to decide for me because I'm going to have too hard of a time deciding which one to prioritize. So I throw up like four choices. Now, this is the second time I've done a poll like this on my channel, and I want to keep doing it about once a month. So you can check my channel for that stuff. Anyway, sorry, sinuses, allergies. So you're going to have to deal with some of that stuff during this video. I apologize. Motel Hell, directed by Kevin Connor, who also did From Beyond the Grave, The House Where Evil Dwells, and The Land That Time Forgot, just to name a few. Written by Robert Jaffe, who also did Demon Seed and Night Flyers, which I've been meaning to see Night Flyers. I know that's based off a Stephen King property. Also, Stephen Charles Jaffe was involved as well, has no other writing credits, though. Tobe Hooper apparently was originally supposed to direct the film, but because there was a lack of studio support, mainly because of the material in this film, they thought it was too dark, too weird, too ridiculous. They couldn't get someone bigger like Hooper to do it. Universal, who did not like the tone of the film, was the big one. If Universal had actually shown interest in it, Tobe Hooper probably would have been the one to direct it, but then in that case, also it probably would have had a larger budget at the same time. So who knows what type of film we would have gotten. It probably would be better than what this is. I enjoy this film, but I don't love it, and I do feel like in the hands of Tobe Hooper, it could have been a way better film in my opinion. Also, the original script apparently was a lot darker and erring a lot less on the side of like the kind of ridiculous and over the top like it actually is. I wanted that film instead as well. I wanted the more serious, dark aspect to it. While I do enjoy, to an extent, that kind of over-the-top ridiculousness in the film, because it gives it this kind of like so bad it's good quality to it that people love in 80s films, myself included. I just really would have liked to see what that darker aspect of it would have been, because it could have been pretty disturbing. Because there definitely is some stuff in this that is pretty disturbing. Mainly the reveal of the vocal cords being cut and the noise, that kind of gargling noise, very, very unsettling, even with the way the tone of the film is now. Harry Dean Stanton apparently was asked to play Farmer Vincent. That's another one that I was like, you know, the Tobe Hooper potentially directing, but also Harry Dean Stanton potentially as Farmer Vincent. I wonder if Tobe Hooper was in place as director and they had a larger budget, could they have gotten Harry Dean Stanton? And that those two on this film with a larger budget, it's just one of those things you just like sit and daydream. You're just like, what would it have been? And your mind just keeps going. It's like, well, it could have been like this. It could have been like this. But, you know, it's futile. We're not going to get that. Especially because Harry Dean Stanton and Tobe Hooper have since passed, unfortunately. I do like how the title of the film spawns from that blinking sign that's obviously Motel Hello, but then that O is just kind of like blinking, and then it explodes at the very end of the film to show kind of like a permanent hell state. Because in the beginning, when it's just kind of blinking, it's like, you know, sometimes things are pretty good here because it's all about hello, neighbor. And then other times it's all about killing people and turning them into smoked meats. And that's hell. So I kind of like how it oscillates between that. And then there's the definitive in the end that's just like, no, it is just hell. There is no hello to this anymore. So I like that aspect of it. Note that when Farmer Vincent is in the woods at night, they drop the music, which creates an ambiguous atmosphere for the situation that happens with the motorcycle couple, them being Boris and Terry, which I'll talk about Terry in the future in a little bit, because I hate the character of Terry. Awful character, just like a crappy stock character, not at all a fan. But anyway, I do like how they kind of like drop the music at that point, because it makes you feel like, what way is this stuff going? They're not leading you by the hand telling you, oh, something bad's going to happen here, or it's supposed to be scary or whatever. you're just kind of left in the lurch, and you're just like, what is going to happen? What are we seeing here? And then that's when the accident is caused, and Farmer Vincent takes his victims, basically, the one of which is alive, which I don't really understand why he kept Terry alive, except for the fact that I guess she was good looking, and that's what he was most interested in. That's my biggest thought on it. Or there was some small aspect of him that's like, I can't kill all of these people. And he's got some sort of like slight moral code where he's like, I'm not going to turn every person into smoked meat. There are some people that I will let live. I mean, that's just my thought, but there's nothing explicit in the film that lets you know why he really kept her around. I mean, I guess it kind of points maybe to her looks and him looking for companionship much later on when he attempts to, marry her. Kind of. The setup does make it kind of seem initially that Vincent and Ida are potentially trying to help Terry and that they're not necessarily bad, because you have to remember that all this goes down before there's any sort of reveal about what's really going on with the smoked meats. At this point, when they're taking Terry in, all you really know is that potentially, who knows where Boris is at that point, because there's so much of a focus on Terry. They're taking her in, looks good, very nice. They also have on the TV the pastor that Ida keeps watching, which gives this idea, this air of, oh, they're good, God-fearing people. They're very moral. So going down all that road, and then the other thing that you really know about them is, they're running a motel, and people have said that they have these amazing smoked meats. But that's going to come into play later. So yeah. I like how the couple who buy the smoked meat sampler aren't concerned about what their twins are screaming about. They come running, screaming to the car because they were scared when they went into the meat processing portion on their own. And they got scared by, I believe, Ida. And then I do think it's funny when Vincent's basically like, here, let me calm them down. And he's just like, ah, and like tries to scare them, and that shuts them up. I guess it's kind of like unscare someone by scaring them again kind of thought process, which I thought was kind of funny, but very ridiculous that the parents of these kids were just like, they're screaming, whatever. I guess maybe that's normal for those kids. It's just weird. And that kind of points to some of the issues with the writing of this film, that like there are some really terrible characters, and a lot of the characters, there really isn't a whole lot of kind of development. I mean, I would say there's a little bit of development with Ida, and there's slight development with Farmer Vincent, but kind of other than that, they're very paper thin characters, really. And even the ones that have a little bit of development, it's really not much. You don't feel interested in them, plus the fact that they're bad people, so there really isn't much of anyone to really cling to in the film. I mean, I know you're probably supposed to cling to Terry because she is good, but she's such a poorly written character that I personally don't. I'm just like, whatever. And then some people, I guess, could argue Bruce, but like, he's such an idiot. He's so bad at his job, and he's been tricked into basically being the great friends with Vincent and Ida for so long that you're like, kind of feels like he's a bit complicit in all of this to a degree. So this is like, I can't like him either. It's definitely crazy that the sheriff gives Vincent a pass on burying Boris. That's one of the things. He's just like, oh, well, where's the body of her companion? And he's just like, oh, I buried him. There's no like he did question like, why did you bury him? He's just like, oh, I figured that you have so much work to do yourself that I just take care of it for you and save you that trouble. And he's just like, oh, okay. Like, first of all, he's very stupid for just being like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. The other thing is that response wasn't a good one, because obviously Bruce isn't that busy, because he's hanging out at Motel Hell consistently. Like, he's always there. Like, he's barely ever actually doing work. We barely ever see him do anything in this film until he gets pissed off because he finds out that Vincent is potentially going to marry Terry. And then he starts doing investigating. He's just like, this has made me so mad, I'm actually going to do my job. It's just like, is that what it takes, buddy? Terrible. You question why Vincent didn't just turn Terry into a smoked meat, but I guess there's some sort of moral code at play. Kind of already talked about that. It's a good reveal of the garden of people, especially with the cut vocal cords. Once again, that gargling noise really is unsettling to me. Now, this is the second time I've watched this film. The first time was years ago, and it's still unsettling. Like, I knew it was coming. I remember that noise. I remember it being unsettling, but it's still unsettling. They did a great job with their sound design in coming up with that. It's great. That's one of the best parts of this film, one of the scariest things, one of the creepiest things, most unsettling things. Vincent certainly does enjoy his work. This is most exemplified in his talk with Ida about the creativity of him coming up with different traps of ways to pull people in to become these smoked meats. Well, go into the garden first and then become smoked meats, but you can feel the joy in how he's talking to Ida about this. He's just like, it's just like the creativity of coming up with these traps to like get these people. He's having fun with it. The other thing is he looks at himself as doing something good. He even says at the end of the film that basically, there are too many human beings, basically. And Ida makes a comment, which you assume is influenced by Farmer Vincent's own ideology on what's going on. She makes the comment that, like, they're doing something for the planet. So I guess he's kind of looking at it as, human meat is like too readily available. So why are we farming these other animals that's causing a lot more waste and, terrible ecological impacts? Why don't we just use the human beings that there are too many of anyway? So we'll get rid of a few of those, take care of some of the overpopulation issue, and feed people. Plus, apparently he's figured out how to make a very good human meat recipe. That's another thing. Which you get the idea because he tells a story about it, that he got that from his mother or grandmother. I can't remember which one it was. It takes all kinds of critters to make Farmer Vincent's fritters. Obviously, that's like the most recognizable quote from the film. But here's the thing. Unless I'm missing something, fritters aren't smoked meats. Am I missing something? You can let me know in the comments. Like, maybe there's an older version of the use, or older use for the term fritters, but I always knew fritters as like a kind of donut, like baked good. So that line, while it is a good, memorable line, and it's kind of funny, doesn't really apply here, which I would say, points to the not great writing, but yeah. Bruce having no reaction to Vincent punching Ida in the gut shows that he must not enforce any sort of laws. Now, like I said, we already see that because he's never doing his job until he gets so pissed off that he does his job. But one of the most egregious things for me was when Ida was going to talk about the recipe for the smoked meats, and Vincent just like punches her right in the gut. And I think he was sensing that she was potentially going to say something about the human meat because she had been drinking at that point, and she was seeming a little bit loose-lipped. But Bruce is just like, yeah, punching, yeah, that's all good to me. I don't care. I think he was very focused on Terry. Ida's character seems to be a swipe at environmentalists, well, the whole thing in general, I think, since she states that her reason for helping Vincent is to help the planet. I do think there's a little bit of kind of like a ridiculousness in the idea intentionally to kind of be a little bit of satire, which I'll talk more about at the very end of my review, but I do think that's intentional. I do think that whole Ida thing was a bit of a swipe at environmentalists and people who are concerned about the planet. Because you also have to remember that, this was back in 1980, so people weren't really talking about environmentalism all that much at that point. Whoops, I lost my place. Bruce is insanely cheap to not pay for the drive-in. It would be pretty uncomfortable to watch an entire movie through binoculars. That's when he takes Bruce takes Terry in his car to this kind of like what looks like kind of a make-out point in a sense, where you can happen to see the drive-in, and he gets the frequency and he has binoculars, so he's like, oh, look, I don't even have to pay for the drive-in. Is he that poor? Like, can he not afford to pay for the drive-in, or could he not convince whoever owns it to let him in because he's a sheriff? I'm just saying, like, think about this. Watching an entire movie through binoculars would be awful. Very, very uncomfortable. But that just shows who he is. And then he basically tries to, like, rape Terry, which you're just like, oh my gosh. Even further hammering home that he's not a character you can really connect with. Why is it that Terry is content to just hang out with Bruce, Vincent, and Ida instead of actually going back home? Maybe we're supposed to believe that she just has amnesia to some degree, that like she doesn't remember that she had a life prior to being with Vincent, Ida, and Bruce. But it just seems odd that she just doesn't really question anything. She's just like, oh, this is where I am. They're taking care of me. This is my family now. And then the fact that she falls in love with Farmer Vincent, who's way older than her. I mean, I guess Boris was definitely older than her and she was with him, but like Farmer Vincent is like ancient in comparison to her age at this point. So it's not really believable that she would start loving him unless they're kind of trying to get at this kind of Stockholm syndrome idea. I don't know. But you also don't really get the idea that she's being held against her will either. It's just like she's there because she's fine to be there. Like she's happy with it. And that's part of what makes her character so bad. How wacky is the swinging couple that shows up, especially when it comes to the whip scene where the wife is just like whipping this whip around and like knocking things off the wall. She puts it around her husband, who I assume is her husband, around his neck. And it's just like that whole thing is probably the most ridiculous thing in the film, honestly. It's very over the top. It seems too forced for getting a comedic aspect to it, but you know, it is a way to get some more victims for Vincent and Ida, so I understand it. It's just really out there. Wouldn't Vincent be concerned about Terry eventually poking around? Or is this a case where he's just so convinced that, oh, she loves us so much and she's so content here that even if she finds something, she'll be fine with it? Although much later on, like, he's in on it with drugging Terry when Ida drugs Terry with the champagne. That it indicates that he doesn't want her to know what's going on. So, like, wouldn't he be very much concerned about leaving her alone? Or maybe he just assumes that Ida's going to go ahead and take care of watching her closely. But Ida has things to do. You're doing this meat business, and you're also doing the motel at the same time. That's a lot of work, especially just for two people. You can tell Ida feels worried that Terry's going to replace her. This is definitely something that comes up. Not from a romantic standpoint, obviously, because you do hear at one point, it's much further into the film, that Ida is actually Farmer Vincent's sister. Or maybe he just says that because he just kind of views her as a sister, but she really feels threatened by the fact that Terry is around, so she's just kind of like, I think she needs to be gone, and that's when you get the whole I'm going to drown her situation where she pops her own inner tube, and then Terry comes over to try and help her out, she starts dunking her very intentionally. And then Terry's just like moves past it. Like, you know that Terry knows that Ida was trying to kill her or trying to dunk her. She could not really play that off. But she's just like, oh, I'm so sorry about that. And Terry's like, it's all good. What? Terrible character. And just when you think the character of Terry can't get any dumber, she tries to bone Farmer Vincent. Hate that. Hate that twist to it. It seems so forced. It seems so stupid. It seems unrealistic, especially for how ridiculous this story is. Just saying. And then obviously that's when Bruce gets so mad, he starts working, doing his police work, and then he finds that body of water of an insane amount of cars, which it's insane to think that nobody had found it up until that point, because you get the idea that Farmer Vincent's been doing this for a while, and there are a lot of cars in there, and it's not deep. Like, the cars are sitting almost at the surface. Some of them look like they're almost actually poking out of the water, and there's a lot of them. So, I guess nobody ever goes there? I don't know. The hypnotism scene is very nutty and an epileptic's nightmare, I will say, but it's kind of fun to a degree. It's ridiculous and over the top, which there's a lot of that in this film, but it's kind of fun, but kind of too crazy. I don't know. I feel kind of like in between on it. I don't know how other people feel. You can put that in the comments. And then another ridiculous scene that's very much over the top, but is an iconic scene from the film, the chainsaw fight scene between Bruce and Farmer Vincent, who is wearing a dead pig's head over his head, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because why is he doing that? Because wouldn't he not be able to see anything? I get it, like, it looks good for the fight scene, but he wouldn't be able to see anything. Like, it makes no sense, and, like, you don't show him put it on or anything, so you don't get any sort of, like, vague understanding why he would even do it, or why he would even decide to. I guess it's because maybe they feel like at this point he's totally off, lost his lid and he's just like unbridled nuts because he is laughing a bunch while they're doing the chainsaw fight. So I don't know, maybe that's what it was supposed to be. Doesn't play that well though. The preservatives line from Farmer Vincent as he's dying. Kind of funny, I guess, but it was also a little bit like, okay, this is how we're ending it. Like he said, oh no, I'm such a hypocrite. I put preservatives in the meat. And then he just like dies. You're just like, okay. I mean, kind of funny, I guess. But there could have been a lot better endings here, maybe, or had him say much more interesting or funny things. I don't know. But I'm sure there are people out there who love that. And you can let me know in the comments if that is you. The acting is pretty over the top for the most part. I think Farmer Vincent was fine, but my favorite was Nancy Parsons, who played the character of Ida. I found her very joyful. I mean, she didn't do like great acting, but it's one of those things where you can tell she had fun with the role and she brought something to it that's just very enjoyable. I love her character. She's my favorite in the film. And I wish she had a little bit more screen time, although she got a decent amount, I would say. This film gets to the point of how consumers have no idea what's actually in the food that they're eating. That was a problem then. That's definitely a problem now. Literally, there is food on the shelves that, to help preserve it, have things like low-level butane. Yes, butane is in lighters. Yes, stuff like that. Or, actual metals as a coloring agent. That's titanium oxide. It's ridiculous. So anyway, this film kind of plays off that, which was a problem, is a problem. People, a lot of times, are just eating stuff, and they have no clue. They have no clue what's in there. Just like with the Farmer Vincent smoked meats. No clue it was human meat. They just made an assumption that it was pork because he had pigs around. This is also about overpopulation, as I said before, because Farmer Vincent says so in the film. And it actually reminded me a bit of the satire writing A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift. If you haven't read that or aren't familiar with it, it's a very old writing that was fully satire. Jonathan Swift had written it up as a proposal for the issue of food shortages for poor people. And his idea was that poor children should be cooked and eaten by people who are higher class. So obviously satire of like classism, basically. And I think that this is kind of a more ridiculous, comedic, dumbed down version of A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift, to a degree. Now, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but you can put it in the comments, however you're feeling about this film. Love it, hate it, in between, let's talk. Out of 5 stars, 1/2 stars in play, I feel like I have to rate this one 2 ways, as just like a film itself, and also as a so bad it's good film. So, as just like a straight up film, 1.5 stars. But as a so bad it's good film, I give it 3.5. I could give it 3.5, between 3 and 3.5, but I'll tip it to the 3.5 because, the chainsaw scene and the hypnotizing scene. Yeah, I'll give it a 3.5 there. So, would love to hear all your thoughts on it. Like I said, put the comments down there. Also, do me a quick favor. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. If you have already, you are awesome, and I thank you very much. If you haven't, it is quick, painless, costs you $0, and it is literally your way to repay me if you like any video I've ever done. Not making money doing this or anything. I'm just trying to build a nerdy horror community here, so join. Also, hit the notification bell button, because then you'll know when I'm putting up new reviews. Well, I do other stuff too, but it could be reviews like this that are super in-depth and have analysis and spoilers. I also do, for newer films, some spoiler-free reviews. I do unboxings from time to time, opinion pieces, all sorts of stuff. So please join. But regardless, I really do thank you for taking your time to check this out. And until next time, keep it brutal.